We have this excellent clip that just went out, I think like 15, 20 minutes ago. Defiant L's, did he just call Trump his vice president? Let's roll tape.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Gee.
Let's start there. Look,
I think we should hear him out. I think he's making a good point. He picks Trump because he's qualified to be president. Yeah, go on, Biden.
There is no limit to the amount of money I would pay to have Donald Trump walk out and address at that moment and say, "That's right, Joe." Just roll with it.
If you look at the Libs of TikTok's account right now, there is a wonderful picture of I guess it's Donald Trump and Kamala Harris kind of mashed together. It's brilliant. Take a check.
Is he going to apologize for misgendering Donald Trump? Because I hear that's a bad thing.
He doesn't have to apologize. He's the first black female president, which he said a couple of days ago, right? I mean, his gaffes are really getting bolder and bolder. Honestly, it's sort of entertaining.
It would be if he wasn't apparently the leader of the free world.
Sometimes when things are going wrong, you just have to laugh as they all come crumbling down.
It's kind of wild. There's speculation that there won't be a second debate because the first was so bad. The Trump administration does not want to give Biden an opportunity to recover from that. So now people are saying he might just say no and argue against it, which means the last...
no on humanitarian grounds.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, and he would. He'd come out and say, just be too mean, can't do it, and make that the reason. And that would twice highlight Biden's frail mind and capabilities. But so this is what they're trying to do. The reason he's probably doing this press conference is because they know his polling's in the gutter. They know that he has to come out and look stronger, but every time he does, he just looks worse.
Well, there was that report that an unnamed staffer in Biden's administration had said, actually, we're kind of hoping that he embarrasses himself because that's the only way to get him to realize it's time for him to step aside. I mean, it's from The Atlantic. It's unnamed. I obviously, you take it with a grain of salt. But if that's the internal dialogue from the people who are, putting him on stage and providing him with a list of reporters to call on, it's not looking good.
I like the idea this is accelerationism, though, because I decided to torture myself right before this broadcast and pull up the front page of the New York Times. And the top stories were the George Clooney op-ed and everyone saying Obama's probably behind this. The fact that they were that brazen means they're almost lending credibility to the fact that they want Biden to go. Then 3 unnamed sources, again, they could well be the homeless man sitting in the corridor, but if they keep pushing it, then it means that they want it to be visible. And then also the idea, and I know this happened later in the press conference, that they were embarrassing the Biden campaign for pre-scripting questions and giving them to all of the news agencies. Mm-hmm. So if they're wanting to make the press conferences look illegitimate, when he's standing up there saying, this is the best press conference you've ever seen, almost Trump-like language, and then have Biden have as many opportunities to make gaffes as possible. It's like they want Biden to get out as quickly as possible to install someone instead.
A major piece of this news cycle was that the Biden campaign was feeding questions to these radio hosts who would then ask him questions they wanted asked. And one of the first things, literally the first thing Biden does when he's going to questions, he goes, I have a list here of who I'm supposed to call on. Yeah. I'm like, how is... This is on purpose, right?
But even then, the list, when he called on the people were critical of him. Are you going to step down? Is basically That's why I'm like,
it's got to be on purpose, right? Why would he call on them?
But the recurring question is, are you going to step down? And Biden's response was, no, you're going to have to carry me out as a mummy. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, for some reason. And the thing is, if it's this bad when it's clearly scripted, imagine what it would be if it was unscripted and live.
Just off the cuff. Oh.
Yeah. This is why I think this is the scripted.
So maybe, I mean...
I can bask in the glory that is finally Joe Biden is being embarrassed and the media is telling everyone his brain is fried, and then go to my family and say, nah, I told you so. Or I can get even deeper into the conspiratorial and say, Biden is in on it. And the reason he waited this long was to keep RFK from winning the Democrat primary. He was the incumbent. He's the heir apparent. He's going to stay in. They're not going to replace him. And then once the primary is over and we're 6 weeks from the convention, now they can go, oh, well, I guess Biden's got to go. And that blocks RFK, who's now got an independent campaign and VP. There's no populist candidates who can come in. And more importantly, it gives Democrats the opportunity to what they're now doing is advocating for a secret ballot among delegates. So no one knows who delegates voted for, just that they're going to go to the convention. The primary is nullified. The delegates are going to cast a secret ballot for, I don't know who, Michelle Obama. And so I can be, I gotta say, I think that one makes more sense than Biden intentionally went out and went, I have people I'm supposed to call on specifically, even though I was criticized for doing this. Like, what?
The thing is, Biden seems to be insanely arrogant and doesn't seem to realize how this whole thing looks. And I think that the Democrats are a kind of female-coded party.
Yes.
And they've come to the point now where they're being publicly embarrassed by his behavior. And if there's one thing that this female-coded party doesn't want to see, it's this kind of public embarrassment.
But then why have the debate?
Well, I haven't got all the answers, I'm afraid. Who knows? These are things that are all behind the scenes. But I think that there's a faction within the Democrats that is pro-Biden that has got a kind of dictatorial control of the party and doesn't want to let it go. And now they're all getting publicly embarrassed by Biden's repeated gaffes, and they're not sure what they're supposed to do. I mean, the fact that Jon Stewart is coming out and mocking him, like that should be a sign it's long past time to go, and yet he's still here.
If he doesn't go, and I think that the reason that he's not gone is because at the end of the day, it is the president. I mean, he is the president, whether he's in charge of his faculties or not. He is the president, and there is no one that can actually force him out other than
Other than Jill Biden.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I think it's Jill Biden, and I think it's Hunter. And if he doesn't go, the all of the criticism by all of the Democrats it's not going to be forgotten. The fact that there's been so much criticism recently, but everything was so pro-Biden and he's sharp as a tack, et cetera, for so long. I've said this multiple times on the internet. This is a national security threat. Like, this is something that makes every country on Earth less safe because he's in charge of the nuclear arsenal of the United States. If he wanted to, he could unilaterally decide to launch a nuclear first strike. Now, whether or not they would actually do it, I hope they wouldn't, but...
Declare the wrong country.
Yeah, I know.
And he's done that before. When he was giving a speech and he kept saying Libya instead of Syria.
Yeah.
But we can tone that down a little bit, Phil. I know it's an easy go to be like the nuclear football, right? But the fact they can order a commando raid accidentally on the wrong place is scary enough. Look at Afghanistan.
Yeah, and so to your point, there are ample ways for this to go terribly wrong and throw the world into significantly more chaos than we're already in. And furthermore, if he were to somehow be elected again, right, and stay in office, there is no question in my mind that means that China and Russia are going to have a significant opportunity to push their agenda, whatever it may be. Now, I'm not saying they're going to take Taiwan and blah blah blah, but you can guarantee that they look at Biden and they say he is not capable of being the commander in chief. You just look at the way that Blinken was treated when he had the summit in Alaska with the Chinese. They were incredibly disrespectful.
Same with the Saudis.
Yeah,
Saudis have been
exactly to your point. Like, the rest of the people talk about how the rest of the world didn't respect Donald Trump and et cetera, et cetera. That was all just cope because Donald Trump actually did inspire fear, if only because they're like, he's kind of crazy. He might do some crazy stuff. Oh, yeah. You know?
Here's what I'm saying, right? After 2016, Bernie Sanders, he should have won. They super delegated him, and they gave the questions in advance to CNN, all that stuff to make sure Bernie could not win, and they were terrified. Trump was not supposed to win at the RNC. The establishment was supposed to be in control, and Trump, much tougher than Bernie Sanders, would not back down. 2020, same thing. They had to have these centrist establishment candidates all bow out at the same time and endorse Joe Biden because Bernie was a serious threat. They could not have another convention, especially when you had, what was it, Dean Phillips? Was that his name?
Dean Phillips.
And you had RFK Jr. saying, we want on this ticket. And with people knowing Biden's frailty, even outside of the big press, there's a strong probability I think RFK Jr. would have won.
And
he's
he
hugely
is
unpopular in his own party.
They iced RFK Jr. out, said, you can't run. Biden is the incumbent. We don't want you. He's the one who's going to. So he says, fine, I'll be independent. Then at the very last minute, the Democrats are now proposing, Jon Stewart is now proposing a solution, whether there's, and they're not stating it directly, but this is a solution to their Bernie Sanders populist problem. The conventions, at least right now, and I'm willing to bet from now on, are going to be secret ballots where you have no idea. This is the Democrats already had a problem with superdelegates. You guys familiar with how that works?
Yeah.
So outside of the primary votes, so you've got the delegates assigned by the primary, and then superdelegates are just people like Donna Brazile, I think, and like Hillary Clinton, who choose who they want to be the nominee, regardless of what the people think. Now, because new information, Jon Stewart said, he called it new information, we should have a reassessment, a stress test on whether this candidate can actually do it. Democrats are arguing they should go to the convention and cast a secret ballot, and it'll be for someone else and no one will know, meaning there's no primaries anymore. Yep. It means the establishment uniparty will just decide who the candidate will be, and then you vote. Yeah, that's kind of like China and North Korea.
It's the UK, actually.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, because in 2019, Boris Johnson was elected and then cooed out on the basis of reputation destruction because he had parties during lockdown. So then it was put to the Conservative Party members whether or not they wanted to choose Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss. And Rishi Sunak was clearly the establishment international banking candidate.
He was a banker himself.
Yes, he worked at Goldman Sachs, if I remember correctly. And then you had Liz Truss, who, for all her faults, was very popular with the party. She was elected, and then within 49 days, she decided to do a marginal tax cut and also wanted to lower immigration behind the scenes, was blackmailed by the banks and stabbed in the back by her own party, and Rishi Sunak was installed instead. Now, if the Democrats want to go with that, I might suggest they look to the UK and look at Rishi Sunak delivering the Conservative Party their worst defeat in about a century and reconsider.
But I don't think they can consider it from any other perspective, right? I think there's such internal chaos in the Democratic Party that they can't look beyond, the doorstep of Congress. It was fascinating to me that Joe Biden sends this letter to them, a sternly written letter saying, I am going to run, I am running, this is Monday. And then Nancy Pelosi days later goes on an interview and says, well, whatever he decides, we're just waiting for him to make the decision. Sooner rather than later would be good. He already made a decision. Biden is very clear. He is staying on the ticket. What did he say in his George Stephanopoulos interview? Until the good Lord takes him out of the race or tells him to leave or something like that. Like a little dark there, Joe.
Wow.
But he's not going to give this up. And so there's a level of if they were being strategic and considering how these types of strategies had affected other countries, maybe, but they're dealing with a really obstinate old man who is not leaving this position and they don't know how to navigate their way out of it. Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe and we'll see you all there.